So today is October 18th, Persons Day in Canada, when we commemorate one of the most important breakthroughs in our country's legal history, which was the Persons case, which came about in 1929 because these five women fought for and won a decision from the highest court stating that women are to be considered qualified persons to participate fully in our democracy, including by being appointed as senators. And one woman who was appointed as a senator because it was made possible by the Persons case was Senator Mary Lou McPhedran, who currently sits in our Senate. And Senator McPhedran recently introduced a bill calling for 16 and 17-year-old Canadian citizens to be granted votes in our federal elections. And Senator McPhedran was talking about this recently on the Progress Canada podcast, and she pointed out that the spirit of that Persons case decision is all about extending rights and is all about broadening our democracy. And that same spirit is really the reason why we should be thinking so seriously about extending voting rights to older adolescents in Canada. So some people, when you raise this idea, say, well, what has a 16 or 17-year-old done to deserve a ballot in one of our elections? I think the first answer is they've often done plenty. There's lots of 16 and 17-year-olds who are working and paying taxes, lots of them who are the primary caregivers for their younger siblings or for grandparents, and 17-year-olds are serving in Canada's armed forces and potentially putting themselves in harm's way to defend our country. But I think the other answer to that question, what have they done to deserve this, is that it's backwards. This ballot is not a perk that you have to earn. It's not something you can cash in or sell, and it's not something that gives you the right to determine or control anything by yourself. It's extremely unlikely that your ballot will be the one that actually decides the election. It makes more sense to think of this as a tool that a person can pick up and use to contribute to our democracy. It's basically what we're doing when we have an election. We're asking collectively, what should the government do and who should lead that government? And the more people there are who are willing to contribute to that process and add their personal view, the more likely it is that it's going to get the answer right. You know, to use a ballot takes some time. You have to come to your polling place, like this one behind me where I vote. You have to spend some time thinking about the candidates and exercise your best judgment. So it's really something you contribute, not something that is a perk which you get to enjoy because you earned it. And I think if young people are willing to do that and make that contribution, we should say thank you. And I think this is especially true given the worrisome trend of declining voter turnout in our elections. We need more people helping to make that decision together in order to be more confident that we are going to make the right decisions. And the decisions the government makes often affect young people more than they affect anyone else. So recently this year, the provincial government borrowed $3 billion in order to send $200 checks to every voter, including affluent and wealthy voters in Ontario. And borrowing that money immediately starts running up interest as part of the provincial deficit. And people who are in their 60s, like Premier Ford, are going to maybe have to pay back that interest as taxpayers for 20 years. People like myself in our 40s, God willing, will have 40 years of paying taxes that'll partially go to pay back that debt. People who are 16 or 17 are probably going to have 70 years or maybe 80 years over which they are going to be participating in paying back the money which was borrowed to fund the $200 pre-election giveaway here in Ontario. So that's just one example of a government decision for which young people are actually going to bear more responsibility than anyone else. Another one is national service. So recently, some conservative pundits have been calling for all 18-year-olds to spend a year either in the army or doing something else that the government thinks they should do. Now, I'm not going to say whether that's a good idea or a bad idea, but I will say that all of the pundits who are calling for this mandatory year of service for 18-year-olds, all of those people are too old themselves to have to actually do it. So if we're trying to decide collectively whether that's a good idea, surely we should have 16 and 17-year-olds who would actually pay the price for that as part of the people who decide whether it's a good idea or not. So I thought Member of Parliament Nate Erskine-Smith made a great point in support of this campaign to extend votes to older adolescents, that we learn civics in high school when we're that age. And the best way to learn something is to have practice doing it while you're learning about it. So if we could incorporate real voting and real elections as part of our civics education in high school, that would create a new generation of active, engaged citizens who are going to be voters and are going to be contributing to our democracy for their whole lives. Some people also say that 16 and 17-year-olds are too irresponsible to vote properly, or they'll just vote the way that their parents did. And as Senator McPhedran pointed out, these are almost exactly the same arguments that were used in the 1920s and earlier against letting women vote. People said, women don't have the mental capacity to vote properly, or they'll just vote the way their husbands tell them to. It's just not true. And if you deal with 16 or 17-year-olds, the type who are going to actually show up and vote, you realize that these are human beings who have thoughts and judgments and values that are just as valid as those of older people. And it's true, of course, that 16 and 17-year-olds are still maturing and still in the process of becoming adults. But this, again, is not that dangerous a thing to give them, right? It's, giving a young person access to a firearms license or keys to a car or hard liquor can have some really serious consequences if that person isn't ready for it. But there's no such thing as an irresponsible voting spree, right? This can't injure anyone or put anyone in the hospital. And again, if you've talked to some of the young people who will actually cast their votes, the ones who are not interested and not ready for the responsibility, they're not going to show up at the ballot box at all, right? The people who do, by definition, are interested enough to think about it. And there's every reason to believe they would make a contribution to our democracy as valid as anyone else's. My daughter is 17 years old. I think she'd be a terrific voter. Of course, I'm biased. A lot of her friends who I've met strike me as equally responsible and equally, valid contributors to our democracy. But anyone who has a teenager knows that they do not do what their parents necessarily tell them to, right? The way this ballot is cast is secret. And, there's every reason to believe that adolescents are going to make their own decisions and make that independent contribution to this collective task we have of choosing our leaders and choosing our future. So I hope people will take a few moments to check out Senator McPhedran's podcast on this and MP Erskine-Smith's bill. And there's also a petition you can sign. And hopefully we'll be able to strengthen our democracy by bringing more people in and build a better future together.